The sea was not calm that night. It roared like a living beast, swallowing light, howling through the bones of wooden ships that clawed their way across the black waves. Lightning shattered the clouds, white fire revealing hundreds of shields glinting like serpents' scales. And at the front, gripping the prow of his dragon-headed ship, stood a man the sagas called the Stormborn King, a warrior who claimed he could hear the voice of Odin himself. His name was Eric of the North, son of no king, born in a storm that killed half his village and survived by sheer defiance. From childhood he swore that no god would ever rule him. He would carve his fate with his own hands. Now, decades later, the storm that had birthed him had returned. But this time, it wasn't the gods who commanded it, it was him. The wind tore at his cloak, the rain stung his face like arrows, yet his eyes were fixed on the horizon, where the coast of Lindisfarne lay waiting, the holy island of the south, guarded not by warriors but by monks and silence. It was the year 793 AD, the raid that history would call the beginning of the Viking Age. Eric's ships cut through the storm like wolves through snow. His men, hardened from years of hunger and war, rode to the rhythm of thunder. Behind them, the old seer Runa, blind but seeing more than any man, whispered her warnings. Greater than, the All-Father watches you, Eric. His ravens fly above the storm. Defy him, and the sky will drink your blood. But Eric only smiled. The sky has had my blood since birth, he said. Tonight, it drinks theirs. When they reached the shore, silence fell. The monks of Lindisfarne, hearing the crash of oars, stepped outside their sanctuary with candles in hand, only to face men with axes gleaming wet with salt. The first swing shattered not just a door, but centuries of peace. Fire rose. Bells screamed. The island of saints became an island of smoke. And at its center, Eric raised his axe to the sky, not to thank the gods, but to challenge them. The chronicles say the raid was brutal. Gold, silver, relics, all taken. But those who survived told of something more terrifying than plunder. They said the northern chief didn't just attack, he spoke to the storm. That when lightning struck the abbey roof, he laughed, as if he had called it himself. In the days that followed, word of Eric spread like a fever. Some said he was chosen by Odin. Others whispered he had killed the god's messenger, a raven, and that now Odin's wrath was hunting him. But Eric didn't fear wrath. He feared silence. In the long dark of northern winter, when his ships returned home laden with treasure, he ordered the construction of a hall unlike any seen before. Massive beams of pine, walls painted with the blood of sacrificed bulls, and at the center, a throne carved from the ribs of a whale. It was said he built it not for worship, but for war against heaven itself. Every feast was a ritual of defiance. He raised his cup to the gods and mocked them aloud. If Odin wants my soul, he shouted, he'll have to sail here and take it himself. The seer Runa trembled at those words. In her sleep, she saw a wolf made of shadow, its jaws wide enough to devour the sun. She saw Eric standing on a frozen plain, alone, surrounded by ravens that did not move. She warned him, greater than, the gods do not forget, Stormborn. They wait in silence, and their vengeance is patient. But pride had long deafened the king. The second act of his legend began with a whisper from the east, tales of a new god, one who bled and forgave, whose followers built churches and refused sacrifice. Eric's warriors mocked this, white god, of mercy. But curiosity burned in him. A god who did not demand blood. Who ruled not by fear, but by faith. To Eric, such a being was an insult to the very essence of strength. So he set sail again, not for gold, but for confrontation. When his ships reached the coast of Francia, they attacked a monastery near Rouen. But this time, Eric entered the chapel not to burn it, but to stand before its altar. There, he found a cross, simple wood, no gold, no power. He lifted it, stared at it, and spat. Is this your god? He said to the trembling monk. A god who died nailed to wood. My warriors eat gods like this for breakfast. The monk did not answer, but his eyes were steady. Yet he rose, he whispered. Something in those words lodged deep inside Eric's chest, not fear, not belief, but something stranger. A flicker of doubt. He burned the monastery anyway, but that night he didn't celebrate. The sea was calm, yet he couldn't sleep. He heard wings above his tent, ravens circling. And in the firelight, he saw the shadow of a man with one eye. Greater than, defy me again, son of the storm, the voice said, and you will taste eternity's silence. He awoke screaming. His men rushed in, but there was no one there. Only ashes, cold and black. Weeks later, Eric began to change. His raids grew reckless, his temper sharper, his sleep haunted. He stopped laughing at thunder. He spoke to shadows. Some nights, he climbed to the cliffs above his village and shouted at the sky, daring Odin to strike him dead. When no lightning came, he felt untouchable. When lightning finally did, it killed his son. The boy had been beside him on the cliff when the storm broke. The flash split the world in two. Eric awoke in darkness, the smell of burned flesh around him. His son's body lay smoking in his arms. For the first time, the king who feared nothing fell to his knees. The seer found him there at dawn, still holding the child, whispering words that made no sense. She placed a hand on his shoulder. You wanted the gods to answer, she said softly. Now they have. But Eric wasn't finished. He ordered the largest ship ever built in the north. Its keel stretched longer than any hull, its sides plated with iron, its figurehead carved in the shape of a roaring wolf. He named it Ragnarok, the end of gods. His plan was madness. He would sail beyond the known seas, to find the edge of the world, where, he believed, the gods lived. He would bring war to heaven itself. When the villagers heard this, they begged him not to go. The priests of Odin warned that such defiance would doom them all. Even his warriors hesitated. But Eric's eyes burned with something beyond reason, a hunger not for gold, not for glory, but for meaning. Greater than, if gods exist, he said, let them face the man they created. And so, on the night of the red moon, the ship Ragnarok left the fjord. 80 men, one king, and a sea that seemed to wait for them like an open grave. The waves rose higher with every mile. The compass spun. Stars vanished. For 7 days and nights, they fought storms no sailor had ever survived. Men prayed, cried, cursed, but Eric only stood at the prow, screaming into the tempest. Greater than, you'll have to do better than this, old man. The lightning struck again, not around them, but into them. The world turned white. When the sea calmed, the ship was gone. They say wreckage washed ashore weeks later, broken planks, torn sails, and on one of them, the name carved deep, Ragnarok. No bodies were ever found. But fishermen swore that on stormy nights, when thunder rolled over the fjords, they saw a ship made of light sailing across the clouds, its prow shaped like a wolf, its captain a figure of flame. And sometimes, when lightning struck the sea, the waves whispered a name. Eric Stormborn. The storm over the Norwegian coast howled like a living creature, tearing through the black sky. Wind lashed against the cliffs near Tonsberg, and the sea below roared with the fury of something ancient, something that remembered. Amid the chaos, the faint glow of floodlights flickered through the rain. A small team of archaeologists huddled near a trench, their orange jackets slick with mud and seawater. Dr. Ingrid Solberg knelt by the excavation pit, her gloved hands brushing the edge of something massive buried in the sand. At first, it looked like ordinary wood, but as she scraped further, its surface shimmered faintly, blackened and metallic. Her breath fogged in the cold air as she whispered, "This isn't oak, it's burned, but it hasn't rotted." "How is that possible?" A shout broke through the rain. One of her assistants waved her over, his face pale. "You should see this." The trench widened into a rough oval where the unmistakable outline of a ship began to take form, a Viking longship, preserved almost perfectly under layers of peat. The size alone was astonishing. But something about it felt wrong. The air around it was heavier, colder. As lightning flashed, the hull seemed to shimmer with an eerie blue light, like the ghost of a flame refusing to die. Ingrid crouched beside the ship, running her fingers along a carved wolf's head on the prow. The craftsmanship was exquisite, but it was unlike any Viking carving she had ever seen. Its eyes were hollow and jagged, and beneath it, etched faintly in runes, were words that only became visible under the ultraviolet beam of her torch: "The man who sails beyond the storm will not return to men." The words echoed in her mind long after the thunder faded. Over the next days, the excavation deepened. The discovery went viral across every major network. "The ship that sailed to heaven," headlines called it. Carbon dating placed the wreck exactly in the early 9th century, around 804 AD. Historians confirmed the style matched known Viking longships, but none could explain the material. The ship's iron nails contained traces of iridium, metal from meteorites. No blacksmith of that age could have possibly forged it. Ingrid barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw flashes of a storm, the same one that legend said had swallowed the ship Ragnarok and its crew a millennium ago. The myth said they had sailed into the heart of the storm to challenge the gods themselves. She'd laughed at the tale when she first read it years ago, but now, faced with the ship's strange construction and impossible preservation, laughter felt hollow. One night, as the rain hammered against her tent, her laptop pinged. An encrypted message appeared on her screen. There was no sender, no signature, only a single sentence: "Stop digging. The Stormborn King must not rise." Attached was an ancient map, marked with a rune identical to the one carved beneath the ship's prow. The next morning, she took the map to Professor Arvid Thorson, a retired historian notorious for his obsession with forbidden Norse texts. His office smelled of dust and candle wax, its shelves lined with runestones and fragments of sagas deemed heretical by the church. He examined the rune with trembling fingers. "You found the codex symbol," he murmured. "They said it was lost with the codex of the Stormborn." Ingrid frowned. "The codex of the Stormborn?" He nodded. "A suppressed saga. It tells of Eric Stormborn, the warrior king who defied Odin himself. They erased him from history, claimed his legend was blasphemy. He sought immortality, not in Valhalla, but beyond the stars." He pulled a brittle manuscript from a chest. The ink was almost gone, but a single passage was still legible: "The ship that burns yet sails shall cross the light bridge. And he who steers it will never die." Ingrid felt a chill crawl down her spine. "So you think this ship was his?" Thorson smiled faintly. "I think it is him." Weeks passed, and the deeper they dug, the stranger things became. Divers scanning the fjord floor found the rest of the ship's body buried deep under the silt. It was massive, larger than any Viking ship on record. When the divers descended to explore, their cameras caught something haunting: a single carved eye on the hull, far below the waterline. It wasn't Norse in style, it was almost mechanical. And beside it lay a skeleton, its skull fused to a bronze crown, mouth open as if caught in an eternal scream. When the divers surfaced, one of them whispered, "He's still down there, watching." The lab results arrived days later. The bones were confirmed as a Scandinavian male, about 45 years old, dead around 804 AD. But something about the isotopic analysis made no sense. His blood contained trace elements that didn't exist naturally on Earth. Cosmic radiation, exposure to something from beyond the atmosphere. Ingrid stared at the report until the lines blurred. "What did you find, Eric?" she whispered. That night, the monitors in the lab flickered. Static bled across the screens, and for a heartbeat, the sonar feed showed something impossible. The reflection of the ship moved. It turned slightly, as if something beneath the water had awakened. The power went out. When the generators came back online, the storm outside had grown violent. Waves slammed against the coast, and lightning raged over the fjord. Local fishermen swore they saw something rise in the flashes, something shaped like a ship made of fire. As Ingrid watched from the tent doorway, a deep vibration rolled through the ground. The ship in the pit began to glow faintly, the charred wood igniting in a cold blue flame. The rain hissed as it struck the hull, and above the thunder came a voice, carried by the wind in a language she didn't know but somehow understood: "The sea remembers its king." The ship shuddered once, and then it collapsed inward, disintegrating into ash. The fire vanished as quickly as it had appeared. When the smoke cleared, nothing remained but wet earth and silence. A week later, Ingrid sat alone in her apartment overlooking the gray sea. The government had sealed the excavation site. They called it a geological anomaly. But she knew better. Every night since, she had dreamed of a figure walking through a storm, his eyes burning like stars. Then, one morning, a package arrived at her door: no address, no sender. Inside was a fragment of bone, smooth and white, carved with runes. The translation was simple: "He sailed beyond the storm. He did not return to men. But men will return to him." She stood by the window, staring at the horizon. The sea was calm now, almost unnaturally so. But as the sun set, she saw something shimmer faintly over the water, a streak of light, the silhouette of a ship just beneath the clouds, sailing through the fading glow of the sky. The legend of Eric Stormborn was no longer a myth. It was a warning. The wind over the Norwegian coast had never been so still. The sea, once furious and alive, lay flat and silent like a sheet of steel. Weeks had passed since the night the ship burned itself into ash, but to Dr. Ingrid Solberg, the silence felt heavier than the storm. Every night, she dreamed of the same thing, a voice whispering her name through thunder, and a ship made of light cutting across a black horizon. She had tried to move on. The university told her the investigation was over, the site sealed under government order. But the air in Tønsberg felt wrong, electric, like the static before lightning. Birds no longer flew over the fjord. Locals said compasses spun near the cliffs, and fishermen refused to sail at night. Some swore they saw something glowing beneath the waves, like the reflection of a burning ship, deep below the surface. One evening, as she sat in her small apartment by the harbor, the lights flickered. Her computer, which had been shut off, suddenly powered on by itself. Across the black screen, words appeared one by one. He has returned. Her heart froze. Then came another message. Coordinates, 59.269 degrees north, 10.407 degrees east. The exact location of the excavation site. Ingrid didn't hesitate. She grabbed her coat, camera, and the bone fragment she had kept since that night, the one carved with runes foretelling the king's return. The drive through the fog felt endless. The closer she got, the more her phone and GPS began to fail. By the time she reached the cliffs, her car's dashboard had gone dark. The site was deserted, surrounded by fencing and warning signs. She climbed over them, her boots sinking into the soft, wet earth. The moon hung low, casting a silver glow over the pit where the ship had once rested. The ground was cracked, blackened, as if something had burned deep beneath the surface. She crouched near the center, brushing away the dirt. Her hand froze. Beneath the soil, something pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. She stepped back as the ground trembled. The air thickened, humming with a low vibration that grew louder until it became a roar. Then, without warning, a column of light erupted from the pit, shooting straight into the sky. Ingrid shielded her eyes. Through the light, she saw shapes forming, the outline of a ship, translucent and made entirely of fire and mist. And standing on its deck was a figure in armor, tall and broad, with eyes that burned white. The figure spoke, his voice both distant and near, like the echo of 1,000 storms. The bridge is broken, but the sea remembers. The gates of heaven have closed, and the sons of men must take their place among the stars. It was Erik Stormborn. Ingrid stared, unable to breathe. The air smelled of iron and ozone. "What are you?" she whispered. The figure turned toward her. His face was half human, half something else. Veins of light ran beneath his skin, and his armor glowed with markings that shifted like molten metal. "Once, I was king of men," he said. "Now, I am what they made of me." Lightning struck across the fjord, illuminating the wreckage of the shore. The ship pulsed brighter, and for a moment, Ingrid saw flashes, memories not her own. The storm of 804 AD, the blinding light, Erik's ship breaking through the sky, a gateway made of stars shattering into dust. A war between unseen forces, angels, perhaps, or something older, and in the center, Erik, wielding fire stolen from the heavens. When the vision faded, she fell to her knees. "Why come back?" she gasped. Erik looked toward the horizon, where the northern lights shimmered faintly. "Because the storm begins again." The light from the ship spread across the clouds, forming strange symbols that twisted and burned. All around them, the sea began to churn, glowing faintly blue. The same glow spread beneath Ingrid's feet. She could feel it, an energy, vast and ancient, rising from the depths. Suddenly, a voice crackled through the air, her radio, still clipped to her belt, though she hadn't touched it. A man's voice, urgent and frightened. "Dr. Solberg, this is the research vessel *Njord. We're picking up massive energy spikes near your location. The magnetic field, it's off the charts." Ingrid pressed the receiver to her mouth. "You need to leave," she shouted. "It's not natural." Before she could finish, the ground split. From beneath the earth, something vast began to rise, not just a ship this time, but a structure of light and metal, shaped like a temple or a gate. Runes carved in flame spiraled across its surface. The sound was deafening, 1,000 whispers speaking in unison, ancient prayers rising from the deep. Erik's voice echoed again. "They thought they could bury us. But the heavens cannot hold their dead forever." As he spoke, beams of light shot into the sky, connecting the clouds in lines of fire. It looked like constellations forming, but not the ones known to men. These patterns were older, alien, as if drawn by a hand that existed before time. Ingrid stumbled back, tears streaming down her face. "You're opening something," she cried. "You'll destroy us all." The king looked down at her, eyes blazing. "No, I am opening what they sealed. The storm that once remade the world must come again, not to destroy, but to awaken." The air vibrated. The sea exploded into light. Every compass in Norway spun wildly, satellites went offline across Europe. In the sky, the aurora twisted into the shape of a vast burning ship, the same one that had vanished a millennium ago. Then, silence. The light dimmed. The structure crumbled into dust, and Eric's figure began to fade. Ingrid ran forward, screaming his name. "Eric, don't leave." He turned one last time. His expression was calm, almost human again. "The sea remembers, Ingrid. And soon, the heavens will too." He raised his hand. For a heartbeat, she felt warmth, a pulse of energy like the touch of sunlight after a long storm. Then, he was gone. The fjord was still. The stars above seemed brighter, clearer, as if something in the universe had shifted slightly. Days later, scientists studying the region reported anomalies, sudden shifts in gravity, unexplained lights in the upper atmosphere, and faint radio signals from deep space repeating the same pattern, runic shapes matching the inscriptions from the ship. Ingrid sat on the same cliff where it all began, the bone fragment still in her hand. She looked out at the endless water, whispering to herself, "He didn't destroy the bridge. He built another one." As the night fell, the sky lit up again, but not with lightning. High above the fjord, a ship of light sailed silently across the heavens, leaving behind a trail of fire and mist. Some said it was a meteor. Others, a mirage. But Ingrid knew. The storm-born king had not returned to men. He had simply gone home. And somewhere, far beyond the clouds, the sea of stars rippled, as if something ancient had awakened, waiting for the storm to rise once more.